Reyn has broken the rules not once but twice. In the nearly 50 years he's been in the toy business, he created a classic by putting people too close for comfort and laughed in the face of the age-old motherly law, "Thou shalt not play ball in the house." Today, he's still at it and still having a ball.
Good ideas. We need good ideas.
Reyn is a toy industry celebrity, a legend. But you'd hardly know it at New York's Toy Fair.
There we are.
He and his daughter, Katie, have a new game they'd love to sell. Tabletop golf.
Oh, bad.
But in the what have you done for me lately world of toy retailing, even a legend can have trouble catching a break.
I can't express how lucky you have to be. I've had a lot of bombs, a lot of turkeys.
And two blockbuster successes. First, the party game Twister, and then the Nerf ball. After graduating from Dartmouth in 1957, Geyer went to work at his father's shop, Reynolds Geyer Designs, creating, among other things, in-store advertising displays. It was all back home in St. Paul, Minnesota. While he was tinkering with a game for a children's shoe polish ad in 1964, he realized he might be onto something bigger. He called some co-workers together and put them on a mat.
We were almost lying on the floor. We were laughing so hard. And it was at that moment that I realized there is nothing on the market that is a game where the people are the players.
So Geyer took his idea initially to the nearby 3M company. They passed, but as luck would have it, he hired a game designer, Chuck Foley, and an artist, Neil Rabins, to work for his father's company. Foley saw the mat, sparking a creative frenzy. The three of them came up with 8 games, using people as the players. One of the games, developed by Foley and Rabins, called Pretzel, passed muster with the board game giant Milton Bradley. Against the team's wishes, the company changed the name to Twister. But the idea of people bending over and under each other found few fans at first, but stirred up lots of critics. They called it Sex in a Box. Remember, this was 1965.
And Sears said, no, this Twister game is much too risque. Meltaft called me and said, Ren, I am very, very sorry, but we're going to have to drop this. And we were crushed.
What Reyn and most of the Milton Bradley execs didn't know is that Mel Taft, a former vice president, never canceled his PR campaign for Twister. In May of 1966, the game made it to The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. One of Johnny's guests, Hollywood starlet Ava Gabor, dressed in a low-cut gown, took the game for a spin.
She proceeded to entice Johnny onto the mat that night, and the rest is history. They were lined up in the morning to buy the game.
Twister turned into a phenomenon. What seemed too risque in 65 was A-OK in 66. Since then, sales have topped 70 million in some 35 countries.
A lot of the ideas that I've worked with break a rule, and that's certainly true of Twister.
Geyer's company collected the royalties. Rabins and Foley ended up with the patent. Foley eventually settled with Geyer on a deal to share the royalties for just a few years, and both left to work on their own. Geyer started a separate company to develop games with a new team. 2 years later, again using people as the players, they were working on a game which had cavemen throwing foam rocks at each other.
It is a terrible game, but one of the guys started to bounce one of these rocks over a net that was nearby, and we all looked at each other and said, bingo.
So they used foam balls to come up with a set of indoor games. This time, Milton Bradley passed, but rival Parker Brothers saw something it liked. Not the game, but the foam ball.
This is one of the crude originals, and we cherish it. They said, yeah, what we'd like to do is come out with the ball. And we went, no, you can't just sell a little foam ball. The original Nerf ball.
They could, And they did. The simplistic, spongy ball, which Parker Brothers dubbed the world's first indoor ball, hit stores in 1970. It was called Nerf, which, despite a popular myth, does not stand for non-expanding recreational foam.
Throw it around indoors. You can't damage lamps or break windows.
Like Twister, Nerf broke a long-standing rule.
No throwing balls in the house. The ball would bounce off the lamp, but the body that followed the ball sometimes took care of the lamp.
By the end of 1970, more than 4 million had reportedly been sold. Geyer soon changed his mind about selling a foam ball.
When we started getting the royalty checks, we had hit another rare vein of gold.
2 years later, the Nerf ball got some company on the toy store shelf.
Nerf hoop, Nerf ball, and Super Nerf.
The Nerf hoop for basketball. And the first ever Nerf football, invented by Fred Cox, the kicker for the NFL's Minnesota Vikings at the time. He still gets the money for that one. But Geyer's line of Nerf sporting goods kept on growing all the way through the 80s. Soccer balls, baseball sets, ping pong, golf, and more. In 1991, Hasbro bought Parker Brothers and took Geyer's hit to another level. Starting with a bow and arrow. A few years later, they kicked it up another notch, creating high-performance blasters.
But this one blaster, Nightfinder, which is at $5.99 retail, absolutely ignited the blaster business. Kids absolutely went crazy.
Nerf is now sold in 75 countries, according to Hasbro's Chief Global Development Officer, Duncan Billing.
There's been enough of these darts sold in the last several years to actually circle the Earth 4 times. Millions of darts.
Industry experts say Nerf's wholesale numbers in both 2010 and 2011 topped $400 million.
It's Nerf or nothing.
And Reyn Geyer got a percentage of all those sales for some 40 years. His deal recently expired, and precisely what that percentage was is private. But Mary Cousin, founder of the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, says
5% is the normal, fee. If you have a property that's really, really hot, you're in a better negotiating position when you go to the big guys to license it out.
I'm very happy for him that actually Hasbro and the Nerf brand has allowed him to have the life that he's had.
While Nerf was blasting off, Geyer and his wife Mary built a home on Florida's West Coast. They've also found success outside the toy and game business, and done so in spite of a startling discovery.
All of our family is dyslexic.
The Geyers were so impressed with the teacher who helped their kids that they started Windsor Learning, spreading her lessons into 34 states and more than 2,500 public schools.
I want to do something that I've never done before.
A talented songwriter, Geyer also hit it big with Reyn Song, a Nashville music publisher he and a daughter started in the 1980s. They've had hits by the Oak Ridge Boys, Faith Hill, and many others. But star power in the toy world belongs to brands like Nerf, not inventors like Reyn Geyer.
He should be one of the top 10. He would be a Tom Cruise. How is a toy and game inventor different from an author, a musician, a chef, an actor?
Reyn Geyer certainly doesn't need to keep playing around. But why stop when you're having a ball?
He's made more than enough money. He doesn't need to keep inventing. It's in his blood.
The ideas that come to me are gifts.
Now, Reyn Geyer's marketing a musical he co-wrote and produced called Stained Glass. He's taken a somewhat unique turn, sending theater managers a DVD, hoping to find a stage for his latest creation.
Next, in debt, out of work, an ex-hotel clerk turns to his friends for inspiration.
They were drinking Jolt Cola and eating